Hey there, it's Krystal Everdeen, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet this shell stitch top. I call it the Shelly, and this is actually a remake of this design that I made last year in hopes of making a better, clearer tutorial. However, I filmed this tutorial at a later time than I normally do and with a different background. So I'm sorry that it's a little darker than my normal tutorials, but I hope you still find it helpful, and it looks like I'm going to have to make yet another remake probably next year, just if you're wondering. But I still hope that you're able to follow along and enjoy this video, so let's get started. For this project, I'm using size 4 yarn from the brand Impeccable, as well as a size 5mm hook. And the first thing that we're going to work on are the cups. So you're going to make a slip knot and then chain a chain of a certain number of chains. It actually depends on your cup size. I am on the smaller side, about a 32B, so I only chain 10 chains for this cup. And after I have chained my 10 chains, I'm going to go back on that chain using a single crochet. And again, if you are a larger size than me, then you're going to need to chain more. And if you're a smaller size than me, then you may need to chain less. But basically how I measure how many chains you need is making as many chains as it takes to cover the bottom of my breast to the top of my breast. So just like lay it on top of your breast, and if it covers everything, then you're good. So after you've made that first row of single crochet on that chain, you're going to chain one, flip it over, go into the very first stitch with yet another single crochet, and then continue on the second row of single crochet until the very end. And then once you reach the very end, we're actually going to do something different than you normally would in any other project. And what I forgot to mention earlier is that if this is going a bit too fast for you, I actually have a video dedicated to making cups. So if this is, too fast for you, the other one is more beginner friendly. Okay, so now that you're done with the second row of single crochet, we're actually going to flip it vertically. Yeah, I know it's weird. And then we're going to make 3 single crochets inside of this middle stitch right here. So all 3 single crochets inside of one stitch. And after you've completed those 3 stitches, you're going to see that you just made this point. And that's perfect. That's exactly what you want to make a cup. So after you've made those 3 single crochets in that point, you're going to single crochet along the opposite side that you were working on the first 2 rows, and you're just going to make another row of single crochet. And after you have reached the very end of that row of single crochet, you're going to chain one, flip it over, make sure that you go into that very first stitch. So many people have issues with their cups curving, and it's because they either do not chain one at the end of each row, or they don't go into that very first stitch, and then they go into the second stitch, and then they wonder why their cup is curving. It's because you're skipping a stitch, so don't do that. If your cup is curving, that was probably the reason why, and if it's not the reason why, then another solution would be to chain 2 at the end and then go into the very first stitch. And if it's still curving, then I honestly do not know why it's curving. Okay, so after you have gone back on that row of single crochet, then reach the top, you're going to make 3 single crochets at the very top inside of one stitch, and then you're going to just go back and forth with the same exact process over and over and over and over again until finally you have made a cup in which you put it against yourself and you're satisfied with the coverage. And again, I have a more beginner friendly version of how to make a cup. I'm just speeding through this because this video is so long. It took me forever to do this top. It was originally over an hour of video footage, and I had to edit it down to like 30 minutes, whatever it is right now. So that's why I'm speeding through it. You could always check out the more beginner friendly version if that was too fast. So yeah, basically just keep going back and forth with the same pattern, back and forth, chain 1 at the end, flip it over, go into the very first stitch. Every time you reach the very top, you're going to make 3 single crochets inside of that one middle stitch until finally you put it against yourself and you like the coverage, and then you're going to cut off the yarn from the yarn ball and make another one the exact same way with the exact same number of chains and rows. And then you're going to grab your hook and put your hook through the loop of the second cup that you made, as well as the loop of the first cup that you made. Grab onto the excess yarn from the first cup, as well as the yarn from the yarn ball that's still attached to the second cup. You're going to bring those two together into one form, I guess. And then you're going to bring it through both loops in a slip stitch, and boom, you've attached the 2 cups. Yay! And then after that, you're going to slip stitch all along the bottom of one of the cups. It doesn't matter really which one, you just have to choose one of them, and then you're going to slip stitch across the bottom of it until the very end. And then once you reach the very end, you're going to make a strap. And this strap is going to serve as the base of what's going to wrap around your torso, basically this portion right here. And all you have to do is make a chain of however many chains it takes to wrap around your ribs. And for me, it's about 15 chains. And once I have created my 15 chains, I'm going to go back on it with a slip stitch again. And I'm actually going to continue slip stitching not only across the chain I just made, but also across the bottom of the 2 cups all the way until the very end. And then once I reach the other end, I'm going to make 15 chains again. And for you, you just make as many chains as you did the first time. Everyone's going to be different sizes, different preferences. So just however many chains you made on the opposite side, just make it again on this side. So for me, again, it was 15 chains. And after I was done with the 15 chains, I went back on it using a single crochet this time. And you're going to go back on not only that chain with a single crochet, but across the bottom of the 2 cups as well to the other chain that you made on the other side. And then once you reach the end of the other chain that you made, I'm a little ahead of myself right now. So right now I just finished the row of single crochet on the second chain that I made, and now I'm going across the bottom of the 2 cups to the other side where I made the first chain, and I'm just wiggling my way through. And finally I'm at the end of that first chain that I had made, and once I have finished my last single crochet, I'm going to chain 1, flip it over, and then make yet another row of single crochet all across the entire top. So yeah, just chain 1 and then single crochet your way across the entire top. So in total you're going to make 2 rows of single crochet before we start the actual Shelly design. So now that the bottom of the 2 cups is looking very nice with these 2 rows of single crochet, now we're going to start the slightly complicated part. And it's actually not that complicated. Okay, so once you're done with those 2 rows of single crochet, you're going to chain 2 at the end of the row, and then you're going to go into the first stitch and make a double crochet. Then you're going to chain 1 and make another double crochet inside of the same exact stitch. And what you just made is a mini, what I call open shell stitch. And it's mini because it's on the side of the, or it's at the end of the row. And then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to skip 2 stitches, go into that 3rd stitch right here, and make 3 consecutive double crochets inside of 3 consecutive stitches. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochets, all inside of 3 separate stitches. So 3 double crochets in a row, like that. So your project should look something like this. And then after that, you're going to chain 1, skip 2 stitches, go into that 3rd stitch, and make another open shell stitch, but it's going to be a little bit different than the one we made earlier, because instead of just chaining 1, you're actually going to chain 3 in between, and then you're going to make another double crochet inside of the same exact stitch, and you made this open shell stitch. And that's how you're going to make open shell stitches unless you're at the end of a row. And the only reason it's different when you're at the end of the row is because it needs to be smaller, otherwise your top is going to look weird. So after you made your open shell stitch, you're going to chain 1, skip 2 stitches, reach on over, and go into the 3rd stitch and make 3 consecutive double crochets inside of 3 consecutive stitches. And then you're going to chain 1, skip 2 stitches, and then make another open shell stitch with a double crochet, 3 chains in between, and then another double crochet inside of the same exact stitch. And then you're just going to continue with that pattern until you reach the very end. And once you reach the very end, no matter what you land on last, mine was an open shell stitch, you're always going to end each row with a double crochet in the very last stitch. Okay, and this is what the first row should look like. So it is just repetitive open shell stitch, and then 3 consecutive double crochets, open shell stitch, 3 consecutive double crochets, so on and so forth. And again, it should look something like this once you're done with the very first row. And once you're done with the very first row, you're going to chain 2. And again, I told you that I left off on an open shell stitch here. So every time you reach an open shell stitch, you're going to make 7 double crochets within that open shell stitch. Yep, 7. I mean, technically you can make probably about 5 to 10, depending on how big you want your scallop to be, but I prefer 7 double crochets inside of the open shell stitch to create this lovely scallop. This is what I call a scallop. I'm not sure if they're actually called scallops, but from now on I'm going to refer to them as scallops. So after you've made your 7 double crochets, you're going to chain 1, then reach on over to those 3 consecutive double crochets that you made in the previous row, find the middle stitch, and then make 1 double crochet on top of it. Easy peasy. And then you're going to chain 1, reach on over to the open shell stitch, create another scallop comprised of 7 double crochets. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And after that, your project should look something like this. Then you're just going to chain 1, reach on over to those 3 consecutive stitches that you made in the previous row, find the middle stitch, and then make 1 double crochet on top of those 3 consecutive double crochets. Then you're going to chain 1, reach on over to the open shell stitch, make another scallop, and so on and so forth until you reach the very end. And then no matter what you end on, you're always going to go into the very last stitch with a double crochet. That way the ends of your rows will be nice and even. So again, every time you reach 3 consecutive double crochets, then you're going to make 1 double crochet on top of it. Every time you reach an open shell stitch, you're going to make 7 double crochets within the open shell stitch, and so on and so forth until you reach the very end. And I'm going to continue with this row and meet you once I reach the end. Okay, so now that I'm at the end of the row, the last stitch in the previous row was an open shell stitch. So for this row, I'm going to make a scallop within that open shell stitch as I normally would. But since this is the end of the row, I'm only going to make 4 double crochets in order to make my scallop. And then I'm going to go into the very last stitch, make a double crochet, flip it over, and then chain 3. And then I'm going to go into that scallop I just made, and since it's smaller than a normal scallop, I'm only going to make 2 double crochets as opposed to the 3 consecutive double crochets that you normally make on top of each scallop. And then I'm going to chain 1, reach on over to that 1 double crochet that's there, and make an open shell stitch. So double crochet and then chain 3, 2, 3, and then yet another double crochet within the same exact stitch and open shell stitch. And then you're going to chain 1, reach on over to the scallop and crochet 3 consecutive double crochets on top of that scallop. And then after you've made your 3rd double crochet on top of that scallop, then you're going to chain 1, reach on over to that 1 double crochet from the previous row, then go into that stitch and make an open shell stitch comprised of a double crochet, then 3 chains, and then another double crochet within the same exact stitch. Then you chain 1, reach on over to the scallop, and make 3 consecutive double crochets on top of that scallop, and then you're just going to continue with that pattern until the very end of the row. And then it just gets really repetitive from here. So then on top of this row, then every time you reach an open shell stitch, you're going to make a scallop, and every time you reach 3 consecutive double crochets, then you're going to make 1 double crochet in the middle of those 3 double crochets, and then you're just going to go into the next row where you make another row like this, where you make an open shell stitch and then 3 consecutive double crochets, and so on and so forth. You just continue alternating those 2 patterns row for row until finally you are satisfied with the length of this portion of the top. So just put it against yourself, and if you're happy with the coverage, then you're done. I wanted the coverage to be right above my belly button, just covering my ribs. But if you want this top to cover all the way down to your waist, or your hips I mean, then all you have to do is continue making more and more rows. And on the opposite side, if you want this to be more of a bikini top, then you only really have to do like 2 to 4 rows for it to be nice and bikini-like. But again, if you want it to be long and you want it to cover all the way down to your hips, all you have to do is make more rows. Just continue making row after row after row, alternating this pattern back and forth, and eventually, once you put it against yourself, you're going to be happy with the coverage, and then you'll be done with most of the top. All we need are the cup details and the straps. Okay, so once you're done making all those rows and you're happy with the coverage, then you're going to start from the end wherever you left off, and you're going to chain. I chain about 120 chains because I like my straps to be very long, but if you don't want your straps to be that long, then I would probably suggest maybe 190 or 100 chains. I don't know, it totally depends on you. So figure out how long your chain needs to be in order for it to be a good strap. And then once you've chained as many chains as you want for the strap size, then you go back on that chain with a slip stitch. And all a slip stitch is putting your hook through the chain, yarning over, bringing it back through the chain and also back through the last loop, and that's it. So once you have gone back on that chain, then we're also going to work our way all the way up here, make another strap, and then down here, up here, make another strap, and then down here, across the side here, all the way to the other side, and then we're going to make a strap the same length as the first one. So this is the first strap I made. I went back on it already using a slip stitch, and then I single crocheted my way up and across the top, and now I am at the cup. And we're going to make the design at the cup, which is really easy. So just chain 1, go to the first stitch on the cup, and make 3 double crochets inside of the same exact stitch. Kind of like you're going to make a scallop, but it's only comprised of 3 stitches. And boom, that's the design. That's all it is. And then you're just going to skip 2 stitches, go into that 3rd stitch, and then make another set of 3 double crochets inside of the same stitch. And that's going to give you that cute little detail that you have around the cups. So once you've made your 3 double crochets, you're just going to skip 2 stitches again, reach on over to the 3rd stitch, and make 3 double crochets inside of the same stitch. And then you're just going to continue with that pattern until you reach the top of the cup where you want to make your next strap. So I am approaching the top of the cup mid design. So instead of making my 3 double crochets, I'm only going to make 2. And then now that I'm at the very top of the cup, I'm going to go ahead and make my strap. And the neck straps are significantly smaller than the back straps because it's only going to go around your neck. So I only make about 70 chains, which is still probably longer than it needs to be, but I like having long straps. And once I go down that chain with a slip stitch, I'm going to work my way across both cups. And then once I get down here, I'm going to single crochet my way across the top to the very bottom of the top and then make my second back strap. So I'm going to go down that chain I just made with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to go down the cup with the same 3 double crochet design that I have been doing on the other side of the cup. And then once I reach the bottom of the first cup and I need to start working on the second cup, all I do is chain 1 and then reach on over to the second cup. It's going to make this little gap here, but when you wear it, you can't even see it. And then I'm just going to continue with the same 3 double crochet design. So I make 3 double crochets inside of the same stitch. And this is my 3rd one. And then I'm going to skip 2 stitches, reach on over, and then continue with that pattern. And once I reach the very top of this cup, I am going to make my next strap comprised of the same number of chains as the first neck strap I made, and then I'm going to go down that strap using a slip stitch. And then once I go down that strap with the slip stitch, then I'm going to continue with this pattern of 3 double crochets down the rest of the cup all the way to the bottom portion of the top, where I'm going to make the second back strap comprised of the same amount of chains as I did for the first strap. And once you have completed all your straps and the cup design, the last thing that needs to be done is lace up the straps in the back. So all you have to do for that is grab one of your straps, reach it on over to the opposite side, attach it to the middle of the top, and then bring it on through, then reach it over to the opposite side again and attach it to the top side of the top, like so. And then once you've done that, you're going to grab the second strap and do the exact same thing, just on the opposite side. So reaching on over to the opposite side, and then attach it in the middle of this portion of the top. Bring it on through with your fingers, and then reaching on over to the opposite side again, and attach it to the top portion of this portion of the top. And then bring it on through with your fingers. And once you have done that, then you've made this cute little corset design, and that's it. You're completely done with the top, and now all you have to do is figure out which outfits you'd like to wear with this top, which it really goes with everything, so yeah, enjoy. Thank you so much for watching this video despite the wrinkled background and the poor lighting. I hope you're able to follow along. Again, I am going to make a remake of this, but it's probably not going to come out till probably most likely next year. And if you did struggle to follow along on this tutorial, I will link the original Shelly tutorial in the description box below. Hopefully you can find that one a little more helpful. And again, hopefully the 3rd one that comes out is going to be perfect, with the perfect angles and descriptions and the lighting and gorgeous background. Again, that is my goal for the next time I do this. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up and also click that red subscribe button if you have not already, so I can see you next time. Bye!